All right, this video is going to use what we know about polygons, quadrilaterals, and all the different quadrilaterals we've talked about so far inside of a Venn diagram. So then when we're asked a series of questions, always, sometimes, or never, we can look at the Venn diagram and decide, okay, what is the answer? Is it always, is it sometimes, or is it never? First of all, we're looking at this polygons. Polygon is just a two-dimensional figure, enclosed figure with 3 or more sides. So all of this is going to be polygons. If you want to go ahead and label all these, put polygons over here if you want. Now the biggest bubble right here, the top one on our flow chart, and that's how this works with our flow chart, is going to be your quadrilaterals. So everything within this bubble is considered a quadrilateral. When we go down this flow chart and we become a little bit more specific, in this, the next size down, we've got our parallelograms. A lot of those properties that were introduced. A big thing is in the name, we've got, parallel sides. There are a lot of other properties, but if you want to draw on a parallelogram, you can. Now, as we go further down, we're going to be splitting into 2 different sides, to the left and to the right of the flow chart. So on the Venn diagram, we have these 2 congruent ovals here. One is going to be the rectangle, one is going to be the square. Okay? And then when we combine these back together, we come back together on this flow chart. I'm sorry, I put square, it's supposed to be rhombus, my bad. Sorry about that, don't want to confuse you. A lot of different names floating around in my head. When we take this, we take these 2 and we bring them together. That's what this Venn diagram means, bring these 2 together. That's where we have our square. So we can use this Venn diagram to help us talk about these always, sometimes, or nevers, S, A, or N. When we look at letter A, a square is a rectangle. We'll find square. Is it in the rectangle circle, or in this case, oval? Yes, it is. But notice it is also in the rhombus. Okay, well, let's not just say yes. It's always, a square is always going to be a rectangle because it's in that, in the rectangle bubble. So this will be an A for always. A parallelogram is a rhombus. So when we look at the parallelogram, okay, we're going to notice that the rhombus is inside that parallelogram, but so is a square, so is a rectangle. So a parallelogram is not always a rhombus, because sometimes it's a rectangle. So this will be a sometimes. C says a rectangle is a rhombus. This one can get a little tricky, but look, here's your rectangle. Is rhombus inside that rectangle square? Guys, it is, just a little bit right here. A rectangle can be a rhombus if it is actually a square. I know, confusing, right? But inside that rectangle circle, do we see any of the rhombus? We do, this section right here. So this is another sometimes. B says a parallelogram is a rectangle. So let's look in the parallelogram bubble. Is rectangle inside of it? Yes. But is it always going to be a rectangle? No, it could be a rhombus. It could be a square. So your parallelogram is sometimes. It's just like letter B, except we're using the rectangle instead. E, a square is a quadrilateral. Square is the smallest little portion here, okay? Is this a quadrilateral? Is it inside the quadrilateral bubble? Yes, it is. Is it always inside, or does it hang out? It's always going to be inside that, so it will always be a quadrilateral. Now we want to look at, is a square a parallelogram? So this little section of the square, is it in the parallelogram bubble? Yes, it is. Does it go anywhere outside of it? No. So that means it always stays inside the parallelogram bubble, so it is always going to be a parallelogram. The last one is saying a rhombus is a rectangle. Let's look. Is the rhombus bubble inside the rectangle? Yes, right over here. Is it always in that rectangle bubble? Is all of it inside of it? No. That means sometimes over here, the rhombus is not connected to the rectangle. So sometimes a rhombus is not a rectangle. So here we say a rhombus is sometimes a rectangle and sometimes not. Hopefully this Made sense. Hopefully you can look at this and tell always, sometimes, or never when asked different questions about your polygons, most specifically your quadrilaterals.